So my paper is called Punishing Copyright Law. So the rights of a copyright holder are property rights. Um, Stealing someone's property right in a copyright is theft. Joe Biden says so much in one of the articles I was reading. He equates copyright infringement to theft. The digital age and the rise of the internet has made this area a little shaky, as the thing people are really stealing is not physical, it's an actual digital file off the internet. So again, the paper is just to explore, the criminal side of copyrights. So the purpose of giving people copyright, just as a quick refresher, is, to give people a little limited monopoly right in their creation to enhance people to create more useful things for people. Real quick, just a little bit of history. The first time a criminal provision was added to copyright was in 1897, and it was just a misdemeanor, and I don't really think anyone could have anticipated the rise of the internet back then and the current problems we're having with copyright infringement that exist today. So here is the felony copyright infringement that's federal, and as you can see, it just comes, with a 5-year imprisonment that can go up to 10 years. It's got some fines in there, and it's got durations and 180-day periods and all that. This is, what you would look to for guidance. In some of the examples you'll see later, you'll see people with different sentences, and I think that's because there's other charges being thrown in there along with copyright infringement. You're getting like wire fraud and, computer fraud, things like that. So the two areas where copyright infringer is going to be punished, or when they get caught, is civil and criminal. Civilly, you're looking to make the copyright holder, who was the victim, so to speak, whole. You're looking to put them back where they were before this had happened, and usually that's done through economic hardship, loss of money, things like that. And as you'll see, they can get pretty large. In addition, there can also be criminal sanctions, and that's, when the state is looking to bring its power against you for violating the law. And, of course, the purpose of criminal sanctions is to punish people and dissuade others. It's really nothing to do with making someone whole. It's just to try to stop other people from doing it and punish you for breaking the laws we've set out. So here we have a couple of examples of cases where someone has been found civilly liable and how their punishments kind of worked out. First off is Capital v. Thomas, and this was the first lawsuit brought by record companies against users downloading their music that actually went to trial. Before this, all the others had settled because the amounts of money that were being thrown around made the settlements very enticing. As you can see, this case is kind of a total mess. You see there was a guilty in 2007 that had $222,000 worth of fines for the music industry, and new trial in 2009 were guilty, and then that $222,000 goes up to $1.92 million. Then it goes down, then another trial, and it's back up to $1.5 million, and finally it ends at $222,000, which is still, for someone just downloading music, an insane amount of money to pay. But as you can see with this case, judges are really struggling with these large civil claims, and like, what do we do? Because they don't want to charge the average user $1.92 million in fines. Additionally, there's Joel Tenenbaum, who is a Boston University PhD student, downloaded and shared 30 songs, ordered to pay $675,000, or $22,500 per song. He tried to say, only charge me less, but the appeals court wouldn't hear it, and they stuck with this $675,000. So here's some examples of criminal copyright claims, just some small cases. It's hard to find those big, sexy cases like you have with civil, but here's a few. Jeremiah Perkins was the leader of Imagine Group. They would go into theaters with video recordings and sound recording devices and like get an actual recording of inside the theater and then mash them together and give it to the internet. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Nathan Peterson, he would get software off the internet and sell it through his website. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison and fined a huge restitution fee. Naveed Sheikh, and this is out of Baltimore, he copied and distributed more than 1,000 software programs, including the big ones like Office and XP. And he was sentenced to 87 months in prison. So they're getting large sentences. Here we have 2 more examples. We have Danny Ferrer. He sold, some of these systems like Autodesk and Adobe and Macromedia, and he got 6 years in prison and rather large restitution. In addition, the courts also ordered him to sell all the possessions he purchased with the money he gained through this illegal venture, and it's just kind of funny because it includes an ambulance that he bought. Lastly, in criminal laws, is kind of a more recent thing, was Aaron Swartz. He was a brilliant programmer, part owner of Reddit, and a research fellow at Harvard, young kid. He was arrested for downloading academic journals with his MIT login and from something known as JSTOR. Federal prosecutors charged him with wire fraud and the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, as well as, copyright things in there. And he was looking at a cumulative maximum fine of $1 million and 35 years in prison. The prosecution would not deal with him, and they tried to request a plea deal many times, and very sadly, when a plea deal couldn't be reached, Schwartz just wouldn't take it anymore, and he sadly killed himself before he could, go to trial for this. And this kind of caused a lot of people to stand up and take a look at the criminal side of copyrights and internet things and think, was this case, was what he did that bad? So for this, I wanted to look at just two forms of how modern piracy is happening, and some criminal stuff with those. And first, we have digital file lockers, and what these are, as far as I can understand, is sort of like cloud-based. Like, you go through the internet and you sign up for an account, and in the account you have this certain space where you can put stuff. And so people have signed up, for example, through Mega Upload, and get like 10 gigabytes of space in Mega Upload's cloud. And what they would do with it is they'd put, their music on there. And other users could go into that person's digital locker and take the music off there. Very popular site, 13th most popular on the internet, 4% of all internet traffic. Kim.com was the owner of Mega Upload. The record company and movie companies brought charges against him in Virginia. His house ends up getting raided in New Zealand. There's a ton of problems with warrants and how it got raided. And right now there's a big snafu about the extradition between New Zealand and America. New Zealand's not quite ready to give him up, and America's still trying. In addition, you have torrents, and you have things like Pirate Bay. BitTorrents are a lot like peer-to-peer, except they're a little bit different in that instead of one person giving you the file, there's a multitude of people giving you small chunks of that file. And while you're taking it, you're also being one of the people who can give people other chunks. It's pretty popular, but people are starting to catch on. There's lawsuits coming out against torrent users. The three operators of the site and the one investor were convicted in Stockholm in 2009, and they got a year in jail each and a large fine as well. Interesting thing about Pirate Bay is now it's connected with the pirate party in Sweden. So if you were to attack the Pirate Bay website, the Pirate Bay owners now say that it's something of a political attack against the pirate political group. So it's kind of an interesting thing going on there. So here's where I'm gonna look at a bit of the international copyright law that I was able to find. Starting off with Japan, they have a very large music market over in Japan, I think second only to America. And they've just recently, about a year or two ago, stepped up their criminal laws. In Japan, it's a 2-year prison term and a rather large fine. And that's not for like a lot of copyright, that's for a small amount of copyright. So that's relatively new in Japan. South Korea has the 3-strike law, where on your 3rd strike you lose the ability to connect to the internet. France used to have the 3-strike law, but just recently they ruled that they found out that wasn't what they wanted to do. So now they're going with fines that are based on how often you're copywriting and or downloading copyrighted material, and how much copyrighted material you're trading in and things like that. So they're going to try and dissuade people through fines. Britain has kind of a similar thing to America. As you can see, just there's a fine of up to such and such and up to 5 years. Really similar to America's system that we have. China's a little different. It's kind of been hard for me to find data on China and how they criminally punish people, but I found this example of a man who was fined and thrown in jail for illegally publishing copies. one thing I found in my research is that China does not criminalize copyright infringement where there is no profit gained. Um, I'm not 100% sure if this is true, but I found it on a website, so perhaps if Professor Priest could give me some input on that, I'd really appreciate it. Spain just enacted a new law where there's 6 years in prison for owners of websites that link to pirated copyright-protected material. This is pretty harsh crackdown from what their old law was. A lot of people have some questions about it, and just linking to pirated copy is kind of a hazy area, so we're kind of waiting to see how that shakes out, but it's kind of an interesting new development out of Spain. Canada, kind of similar to America and England, has, the lockups and the fines that the two countries do. So what does this all mean? Well, starting with Napster. Napster came out and it opened up the world to peer-to-peer file sharing and getting music for free. And at its height, around 60 million people used Napster. I'm going to argue in my paper that a lot of people knew what they were doing. They knew they were getting music for free, and to say they didn't think they were breaking the law, I think would be kind of naive. Everyone kind of knew we were breaking the law, but everyone was doing it, and as you can see, 60 million people use Napster. So, in addition, we are the internet generation. We've grown up with peer-to-peer. We've grown up with the ability to go on the internet and get a song, a movie, a book for free off the internet very easily, and also we've grown up with a group of people where it's been kind of accepted to do that. A lot of people have done it. As you saw in our class, everyone raised their hand and said that, yeah, I've downloaded something illegally at some point or another. Now, for the purpose of the paper, I'm going to try to link this with something like that. Like, think of any other crime, like arson, murder. I mean, those are extreme examples, but think about, basic theft. What if 60 million people went into stores and started stealing goods? It'd be pandemonium and crazy. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about with the generation we're currently in. So in that respect, has society changed? And I believe it has. Criminal infringement of copyrights on the internet in this generation, in my paper, is going to argue, isn't really theft in the way that it should be defined. We as a society don't look at going onto a torrent site and downloading some music as theft. I would argue that when 60 million people are committing the crime, and then no one other than the copyright holders being hurt, it's society's way of saying we don't want to pay for music when we can get it for free. This shouldn't be illegal. The harm done to the right holders is different because there is no loss of the personal property. It's like I said earlier, it's not like someone comes up on you and steals your watch. It's a digital copy of your music you've created, which is, again, shaky. In addition, our generation knows the difference between right and wrong. We're all not going out and committing crimes. But the idea of torrents and Napster being illegal in the same way that most of the other laws we have are illegal, I think has changed a lot. And I think it's worth considering when we look at how our policy is formed, that maybe we shouldn't have these great criminal sanctions on illegal downloading of copyrighted material. So finally, the thesis for my paper is going to be that criminal sanctions to the average user are kind of cruel and unusual. You're never going to get rid of the civil sanctions, and as I noted in those cases earlier, the civil sanctions that are being held up are absolutely huge. You saw the kid with 30 songs is getting hit with a $650,000 fine. So there is a deterrent out there, and I think it's the way to do it. I don't think we need to tack on prison sentences on top, or even throw the looming threat of the criminal arm of our justice system at people. However, the people who create the websites that make copyrighted material available, I believe there might be an area for criminal law in there, as to you're creating it knowing that people are going to be using it to trade in music that other people aren't going to pay for. So I think maybe to them, and it's kind of like what I've been seeing, maybe against them criminal sanctions should be available. But to the average user, I don't know if we need prison times and things like that for them. But so my paper is going to look at that, and that's kind of, I believe, what my thesis is going to be. Um, Again, society-wise, I don't know if we view copyright infringement as a crime that needs the criminal system. I don't know if that's necessary. We have this civil system where people are getting, $500,000 fines for 30 songs. If that doesn't deter you, then maybe we just need to make the civil procedures, make the civil litigation side easier for these copyright holders to get their money from these infringers.